DJLG.
Life's good.
Hey, it's Diane, Key, and LG, and this is episode 51 of the Now What podcast. In today's episode, we're going to discuss the Atlanta spa shootings, the police response to the crime, and the social movement to expose America's truth about hate crimes against the Asian community. Before we get into the show, you can also show us some love by checking out our website at nowwhatradio.com, and special shout out to CCG 420 and El Jefe in the movement and the Now What Pateron community. Now let's get on to the show.
This is a gorgeous spa.
I know. Where's the person who is robbing the spa? Where is he right now?
I don't know. I'm hiding right now.
Okay. Did you have a description of him? Did you see him?
Oh, yeah. Just a white guy.
A white male? What is he wearing?
I don't know. Please come, okay?
Key, LG, I gotta be honest with you, this is a trigger topic for me, and I have some very strong positions on this. So I appreciate you bringing the topic to the people.
So yeah, this was a tough timeline to put together. The heinous details that were revealed as I was doing my research is just something that's truly unthinkable. The first thing that I want to say about this is definitely a hate crime. What we found is that on March 16th, around 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, police get a call from a Young's massage parlor about gunshots being fired inside of the parlor. Shortly after that, police get a call from the suspect's family saying that this was their son. What we can tell you then is that at 5:47, this is almost an hour later, police get another call from a Gold Spa, which is about 30 minutes outside of the Atlanta area, about shots being fired at that facility. And just moments later, there's another call from an aromatherapy spa that's right across the street from the Gold Spa about reports of a gunman being there. What happens then at 8:30, several hours later, police dispatchers are in hot pursuit of a suspect that goes by the name of Robert Aaron Long. Police on the freeway had to use a police tactical move to ram his car with one of those tactical side swipes that you see in the movie, and they arrested him, and they found a 9mm handgun in the car with Robert Aaron Long. What we can tell you about Robert Aaron Long is that after this rampage, 8 people were dead. He's a white male, age 21. He attended megachurch, and he has a post online, and his headline says, pizza, guns, drums, music, family, and God pretty much sums up my life. And to that I say, no, sir. We can add psychopathic, unhinged, cowardly mass murderer to those details. Diane, this was a tough situation to hear about. This was a tough, day. Diane, LG, what were your initial reactions when you heard about what happened on this crazy day?
Yeah, I actually first want to comment on the 911 call, because that itself was so frustrating to hear.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But you have this Asian woman who is clearly hiding in fear of her life, just trying to make sure that they get there. And they're asking her all these questions. And she's like, excuse me, I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm hiding because someone's out there shooting. So no, I don't know I have no idea what you're asking me. Stop asking me these questions. Like, just get here. And I felt the frustration, and I struggled with what the motive could be. My personal response or reaction, emotion, was sympathy for the victims, their families, and the entire Asian community.
Yeah, Key, I sympathize and I empathize with those family members who were taken away in such a mindless, emotionless, and depraved way. just my opinion here, but this heinous act is really a confluence of hate and the epidemic of mass shootings running rampant in our society today. In reflecting, on this event, I kind of asked myself, have these type of incidents become normal in our American society? And by incidents, I mean hate crimes and mass shootings. Have we, in a sense, normalized these? And this really made me think about this with a firsthand experience with my kids. And in this situation, my kids actually went to a trip to Six Flags recently. And unknowingly to them at the time, there was actually a shooting in front of Six Flags that triggered a mass response by a bunch of the visitors within Six Flags. And so essentially a teen shot another teen in an argument. And at the time, my kids didn't know this fact. But, as my kids were about to leave Six Flags on their way home, people began frantically running, and my kids began running with the crowd to escape at the time an unknown danger. When they got home, they mentioned this to us, my wife and I, kind of in passing. And it was like, Dad, we were running with a lot of people. And at the time, I really didn't think too much. Their tone did not lead me to any alarm. But a day later, my wife and I actually find out that there was a shooting that had sparked the chaos. And other patrons within Six Flags, if you will, thought it was a mass shooting situation and reacted such. And I followed up with my older son and I asked him, how they felt, now knowing that this was the reason of the chaos. And for them, they kind of summed it up as they've been mentally prepared and trained for such events. And they were like, yeah, Dad, we have active shooting drills at school. And I was like, I remember hearing this, but it struck reality that this is truly the case, that our kids are preparing for such incidents and that they become normalized. And so, I just recalled when I was in school doing tornado drills, for example. And so I'm wondering what effect this will have on our society moving forward if we continue to normalize these type of incidents and events.
He made indicators that he has some issues, potentially sexual addiction.
He was pretty much fed up and kind of at the end of his rope, and yesterday was a really bad day for him, and this is what he did.
So, of course, the police response, the captain, the press conference, which I felt was a shit show. All right. The captain saying that this man had a bad day. He had a bad day after murdering 8 individuals in cold blood. I've seen a lot of press conferences, and that actually prompted me to kind of go back and watch previous press conferences when other murderers had been captured. The phrase bad day, I don't think had been used in in any of these press conferences. But what's unique about this one is that because we find that the victims are of Asian descent, and of course the perpetrator here is a young white male, it almost appeared as if the captain was softening his response. At least that's how it appeared to me. What was your reaction to the captain saying that this was a bad day?
Yeah, Key, I think this captain, if you will, this person has no business being in leadership or maybe even a police officer for that matter. I think his statement reflected his bias to Asian culture and maybe even other cultures. And really his tone, whether that tone was implicit or explicit, was really meant to diminish not only the victims, but also the perpetrator's accountability. Further reporting on this captain in particular has come to light where Captain Baker actually promoted T-shirts related to the coronavirus on his social media with text saying imported virus from China. And that was spelled CHY-NA. And so from my view, this officer's social media post is a reflection of a challenge and a problem with our society today, where even at the highest levels of leadership, you're seeing this type of hate language being put out. And in this case, China, in the way it's spelled, is probably in reference to the way that the previous president, Donald Trump, pronounced China. And so he kind of, in my view, laid that foundation to make this hate speech almost acceptable and normalized again. And so I think it's a very dangerous path. And we as people, if you will, have the opportunity to hold our leaders accountable when we talk about voting and other things. So I think that's kind of my reaction.
One of the things that came out in this press conference was that it's the police officers, and I don't even know how they got this information this swiftly, but one of the things that came out in that press conference was that they were saying that this guy has a sex addiction. As far as the police saying that he had a sex addiction, this crime, as far as I know, still hasn't been labeled a hate crime officially. Diane, LG, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think this was a hate crime? I have my own thoughts, but I'd like to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, from my perspective, I would argue that all of these mass shooting type of incidents are hate crimes in the most general sense of the concept of a hate crime. Another human is essentially taking their fury, their anger out on another human. That's in the general concept of a hate crime, in my opinion. And so in America, I think we've codified the definition of hate. So it is a lot more narrow. And I guess this really is a debate in that the perpetrator indicates his actions were not motivated by hate, but maybe by some sexual addiction, etc. But obviously, I think we see other evidence, probably, and maybe even just common sense and logic may suggest otherwise. But, I'm not familiar with the specific hate crimes laws, if you will, in Georgia to give a specific opinion against that bar. But what I will say is that we can't rule out that this is not a hate crime as defined by the law based on the perpetrator's statements alone.
Right. Well, can I give you the definition of what a hate crime is? A hate crime typically involves a crime that typically involves violence that is motivated on the basis of race, religion, sexual orientation, or other groups. That is the definition of what a hate crime is. And because this gentleman selected 3 locations, all three of these locations had Asian Americans working in them. And there have been reports saying that this man, that people heard him saying that he's here to murder Asian people. That, by the definition, is a hate crime. How the police are not labeling this as a hate crime yet, first of all, I'm not surprised by this. We all know that there is a nationwide cover-up, with law enforcement to underreport hate crimes, which is why we encourage all of you, if you have to report a hate crime, if you're experiencing a hate crime, or if you know of a hate crime, you need to report that to the FBI, not your local police, because it might get swept under the rug. And here we have a national story where a white guy goes into 3 separate locations where Asian women are working, and they want to call it a crime of addiction. No, this is a hate crime. And dare I say that the anti-Asian climate that we have right now in America, which was fueled by Donald Trump and his lackeys spreading misinformation about the coronavirus, probably attributed to this ridiculous situation that we're dealing with today.
One of the things I think about as an Asian American historian is how tragically this is not new. In the 1860s and 1870s and 1880s, Chinese in the United States were blamed then for outbreaks of smallpox. In the early 1900s, Newly arrived Japanese migrants were targeted for the outbreak of bubonic plague. And I think about the history of U.S. colonialism in the Philippines and how Filipino bodies.
Asians, like Latinos and blacks, are minorities in this country. However, it seems that many believe that the Asian community hasn't been as active in the fight against white supremacy. Many, in our community, I've heard this from a few people, has even said, that this is not our fight. I have some really strong opinions about this.
Yeah, I think those who say this is not our fight, I think that sentiment is definitely the wrong outlook to look at, what's happening in our society. So I definitely disagree with that sentiment. Me personally, I had a lot of opportunities to experience the Asian culture directly, in that I've traveled to many Asian countries, Japan, Singapore, Taiwan, just to name an example. And I've seen firsthand the value that some of those cultures could bring to our society. And so it is our fight. And anytime there is injustice, no matter race, creed, or whatever, it's us as individuals to stand up. And just one more thing of note from a personal side is, recently our company started these ERG groups, or these employee resource groups, and one of them's the Black resource group, the Asian resource group, the LGBT resource group, etc. And in some of our early meetings, we had a lot of Asians who joined the Black, if you will, resource group, and we were going around and explaining what we wanted to get out of the group and why we joined. And one of the most interesting learnings for me is that those Asian brethren and sisters who joined essentially said, hey, those as part of the injustice and social movement in the Black community directly impact our community, and that the way the Black community and those rally against these injustices are key learnings we can take to better our community on the Asian side. And that was really eye-opening for us to say, we as the Black and brown community actually can uplift and elevate other communities who are facing very similar social justice issues as we are.
Racism in America is as American as apple pie and baseball. Our Asian brothers and sisters have a long history of being discriminated against here in the United States, and that discrimination is based 100% on their race. The first immigration laws that prohibited people based on the idea solely of race was passed in the 1800s, and it's actually called the Chinese Exclusion Act. That law prohibited all Chinese immigration. And at that point, this is the late 1800s. This is when America were only immigrating white people from other white nations. And so they actually have the first law that's called the Chinese Exclusion Act. That's not subtle at all. You can go look that up, right? Dr. Seuss, of course, that's been in the the news lately here, but his publishers just pulled back several of his books. Many of those books were pulled back because they had racist Black and Asian tropes in them. Of course, you can go do your research on that. And of course, we have twice impeached former President Trump using his platform to create division and racism by calling COVID-19 the China virus. So let me just say this. First of all, Asian Americans have been subject to discrimination. Yes, there's this notion out there that they are this model minority, but that was something that was created by white supremacy. Frank Chin, the Asian writer, he says that whites love us because we're not Black. And as you go to cultural historian Robert G. Lee, he says that this model minority concept was created to undermine the activism of African Americans, indigenous people, and other marginalized groups in the United States. So white supremacy actually is pitting Black people, Mexican people against Asian Americans. So when I hear people say that this isn't our fight, I want you to know that you have been duped by white supremacy, and you are falling for the trap that white supremacy has set for you, which is division.
Now What is dedicated to topics and issues impacting the Black and Brown community, to elevate and empower our people, our voices, and our cultures. We hope today's episode inspired you to have a Now What moment. Thanks for listening, and remember, if you want to support what we do, then share, subscribe, and listen to us at nowwhatradio.com. And until next time, stay inspired.